Giovanni about open source, and specifically you said open source in terms of how it can help with your productivity, but also how it can help your career.
Exactly.
So why don't we start with productivity, because I just gave a talk about productivity, so that sounds like a really good place to start.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I think is important with open source is it's not only very good for your own development as a software developer, but also because you actually get to know the tools that you really like and you really want to contribute to. And when you know how they work internally, you can actually use these tools very effectively as well. So I think that's very important, to be way more speedy when you're developing stuff. For example, I got into open source and I was like, I really want to know how this tool, Maven, works. And by doing that, I got to know the internals, and that allowed me to actually be more productive with Maven builds and helping people speed up their builds and whatnot. So I think that's very useful when you find the tool you really like and you start working on it open source.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, so you're suggesting that people, if you're using a tool you use, if you're working with an open source tool like Maven or like maybe Jenkins or like some of these tools that all of these organizations work with, JUnit is a good one example.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you want to understand it much, much better, you don't just become a power user of it, you also become a developer. So you can sort of see how was it called? What did they say? How the sausage is made.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so another example is for SRJ, for example. It's also a very powerful tool, and it makes your test very clean. And I actually fixed a bug in there. Like I was looking, I think it was with Oktoberfest. I was like, yeah, I want to do something for SRJ. It's something I use, I really like. I'll look up a simple bug I can try to fix, and it gets you into the code, and you're like, oh wow, this framework uses all these kind of cool things. How does it work? And you find new usages of methods you may have never heard of, and you're like, oh cool, I could use that, and this really solves the problem I'm trying to face in a different project. So it's a very explorative, very effective way to get to know the tool.
So I kind of hear that you get to know the tool and you're kind of poking around inside it and you get to see the insides of it. But it also feels like it's quite a good way to see other people's code, like hopefully good code that other people have written. And so you can kind of take some of those patterns and techniques perhaps into the other work that you're doing.
Yeah, so it's not only making your context more broader, so you get to learn more people or get to know more people, you get to see actual different implementations of something you may have never seen before. It also gives you the experience with, for example, if you've never used reflection and you're working on a framework, you're like, oh wow, this is scary stuff, but it could be very useful for making a library.
My experience with working with open source libraries is it is very different working with a library than working on enterprise software, because
definitely,
other people use it, you have no control over those people, how they use it, and so the way that you create your code has to be quite defensive, and it's a different way of thinking when you're working with a library or a framework.
Yes, there's also a lot more to think about. I think, for example, when you're working on business software, you actually have to, or you have more freedom in a way, because when you're working on a library, you have to think about all the different kinds of ways your software can be used. And you have to maybe think more about backwards compatibility. Maybe someone doesn't want to upgrade their Java version, or maybe someone is still using an old build tool and it will break their build. So there's so many things that goes on when you work on frameworks or open source, and you just really broaden your knowledge or your vision of software. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's pretty good for your career to get this experience in a totally different way. So like what sort of positive effects can you expect on your career?
Well, I had the opportunity to work on open source through our company. So we actually can use working time or spending contributing back to open source. And it allowed me to actually meet some new co-workers. They took me to conferences, and I was like, oh cool, so conferences is a really cool thing. And that ended up being a talk on DevNexus. So we spoke there. I was like, this is really cool, I really want to do this. And then I had the opportunity to create my own talk about something I really like, which I gave here as well, about Maven archetypes. And I was like, yeah, I can make a talk, I can do this, I really want to share my knowledge. And it gets you into places like DevVox or DevNexus or JavaZone. So I think that's also very, very cool and very important, just contributing back to the community.
I'm a big fan of conferences. This is what I do for a job, right? But I agree. It's really nice when you've been working on your real life code and your real life job. That's kind of one set of communities, but actually getting out to a conference and hearing the speakers, but also speaking to other people inside the conference, and it does open up your eyes and gives you a different view on things. And think what was interesting was what you're saying, but it is great for your career to present at conferences if you get the opportunity, because it's a good way of saying, look, I'm really smart, and these are the things I kind of know about. Have you found that?
Well, not only that, but I think one of the important things about, for example, going to a conference is getting to speak to all the kind of people. Because, yeah, you can go to, for example, this conference, and you could rewatch the videos as well. So I think the very powerful aspect of a conference is getting to speak to the speakers, to other people, to really interact with each other and come up with new ideas or face problems together. So I heard this story where someone's like, yeah, I really don't know how to solve this problem, and they went up to the booth with the laptop like, yeah, could you help me with this? And they're like, this should work. This is weird. We have to look into that, and they just kind of figured it out along the way, and they, reported the ticket for it eventually because it was supposed to work, but it wasn't, and they had to find a bug.
Yeah, I had that experience when I used to go on the JetBrains booth. People would come up and say, like, instead of someone asking you over Twitter, like, I have a problem with IntelliJ, and you're like, well, that sounds very vague. They would come up and they'd be like, here's the thing, and they'd show it to you. Be like, oh, did you know you can do this, that, and the other? Or, like you say, just record the ticket and make a note in the bug tracker. Yeah, it's a good way. It's just great for connections, like you say. It's great to sort of meet people, hear what the problems are, and just bounce off each other.
Yeah, and that's what I try to say. Like, just going out there, just getting to meet new people, because I think that's a very important aspect of our jobs as well. Not only being a software developer or maybe a platform engineer or whatever. There's a whole community out there, and just so many new faces to meet and so many new experiences to learn. You're not alone in there. You're not like you're a software engineer in a dark room with pizzas and Mountain Dew and whatever. It's a community thing, and it's difficult, but it's also very, very important to share and to get to know people.
I think that's such a good way to wrap up this whole thing, and I think we'll wrap it up. Yeah, I think it's the community thing. Developers are so much more than code machines. The community thing, get out there and like meet people at conferences and share your knowledge and give back to the community.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Thank you very much.